Sometimes a life changes because someone brings you bread. Not money, not rescue, not a grand speech under a church roof, just bread. A warm molasses loaf wrapped in a blue cotton cloth, carried across a frost-white pasture before the sun had climbed over the Bitterroot Mountains. A woman holding it with both hands. A man standing on a porch he had stopped expecting anyone to climb. And one sentence spoken as a joke that was not a joke at all. Rose Emery was 26 years old in the autumn of 1891, and she knew the valley better than most men knew their own ledgers. She knew where the irrigation ditch froze first. She knew which gatepost leaned after a hard wind. She knew the smell of rain before it crossed the ridge. And she knew Henry Vale. Henry was 54, a widower, a rancher with weather in his face and silence in his bones. The sort of man grief does not break loudly. It hollows him out, then teaches him to answer every question with work. His wife, Abigail, had died 4 years earlier after a fever that came in March and stayed long enough to become the season itself. When she was buried on the hill behind the cottonwoods, Henry went home, closed the little east room where her sewing basket still sat by the window, and rose before daylight the next morning to check cattle. That was what people remembered. Henry Vale went back to work. Some said it with respect. Some said it because they did not know what else to say. Henry never corrected them. Work was not courage. Work was the only door still open. Rose began bringing food the month after Abigail's burial. Not every day, not often enough for gossip to make a full meal of it. Just Fridays. A crock of beans when the nights turned hard, a heel of cheese after market, a loaf when she had extra flour. Henry always said the same thing. You didn't need to trouble yourself. Rose always answered the same way. I know. After 4 years, those words had become a kind of fence between them, plain, useful, easy to lean on. Henry kept her in the category of neighbor because neighbor was a safe word. Neighbor asked nothing of him. Neighbor explained the bread. Neighbor allowed him to open the door, accept the kindness, and close the door again before his heart made something dangerous out of it. But Rose Emery was not the kind of woman a man could keep safely categorized forever. She ran the Emery place alone after her father's lungs sent him east to live with her aunt. 48 acres, 12 milk cows, a small apple stand, and enough stubborn fence line to test a saint. She kept accounts in a black notebook. She bought hay by weight and not by charm. She could tell a weak saddle horse from a tired one in 3 steps. At the Hamilton market, she was polite enough to be underestimated and exact enough to make men regret it. Henry noticed all of this. Then he made a practice of not noticing what it meant. Until the Friday morning she crossed the pasture with the blue cloth in her hands. She frosted silvered the grass. The mountains were blue at the base and gold at the peaks. Henry was on the porch with coffee, pretending he had not been watching the south field. Rose came up the steps and held out the loaf. "Molasses," she said, "still warm." Henry looked at the bread, then at her hands, then at her face. And the smile came, not the polite one, not the tired one, the rare smile that made him look, for half a second, like the man grief had buried but not killed. "If I had 15 fewer winters on me," he said, lightly, "I might mistake this for courting." He meant to let the words pass, a little joke, a harmless thing. Rose did not smile. She looked at him as if he had finally opened the wrong door in the right house. Then she set the bread on the porch rail. "Henry Vale," she said. 15 winters were never what I was measuring. Before he could find an answer, she turned and went back down the steps, across the frost, across the pasture, back toward the place she had been holding together with both hands for years. Henry stood on the porch long after she disappeared behind the cottonwoods. He looked at the blue cloth. He looked at the cold coffee in his cup. Then he went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and did something he had avoided for 4 years. He wondered what a woman meant. Hamilton, Montana had opinions. Every town does, but a new railroad town has opinions with boots on. The rails had pushed more money through the valley than anyone had expected. New stores opened, old families counted newcomers, and every porch within 10 miles considered itself qualified to advise a capable unmarried woman. The town's favorite answer for Rose Emery was Martin Knox. Martin was 29, clean-jawed, pleasant, and the only son of the man who owned the sawmill and half the freight wagons between Hamilton and Missoula. He wore good coats. He spoke smoothly. He understood how to arrive with something in his hand that looked generous, but felt arranged. Coffee beans from Helena, a ribbon the color of summer plums. Once, a little book of poems Rose suspected he had never opened. Martin was not cruel. That made him harder to dismiss. He was sensible, prosperous, admired by the right people. And because the world has always mistaken public approval for private truth, Hamilton considered the matter nearly settled. Mrs. Whitcomb at the Mercantile told Rose, "That Knox boy would make you a fine husband." Rose bought lamp oil and said, "Would he?" Mrs. Whitcomb blinked because she had expected gratitude, not a question. "He has means," she said. "So does a bank," Rose answered. Her friend Alice, who had been married 6 months and therefore spoke with the confidence of a judge, was more direct. "He looks at you like a man already measuring curtains." "Then he should stop," Rose said. "Rose." "What?" "You cannot run that place alone forever." Rose looked through the window toward the mountains, where the first snow had touched the high ridges. "I am not asking for forever," she said. "I am asking not to mistake ease for shelter." Alice studied her. Then her voice softened. "This is about Henry Vale, isn't it?" Rose did not answer. There are truths that change the room the moment they are spoken. She was not afraid of loving Henry. She was afraid that once she said it aloud, the world would start counting for her. 54, 26, widower, young woman, past, future, as if years were coins and the one with fewer had somehow spent less life. That evening, Martin Knox came to her door with a parcel of coffee and asked if he might escort her to the church supper in November. Rose stood with one hand on the doorframe and saw the whole respectable road laid out in front of her. A good coat, a good house, a husband the town could admire without adjusting its spectacles. "I'll consider it," she said. Martin smiled like he had been handed a promise. After he left, Rose put the coffee on the shelf and did not touch it. Then she went to the window. Across the pasture, Henry's barn stood dark against the last light. She knew his evening habits. Mend the lower latch, check the near pen, bring in the old bay mare before the temperature fell. She knew them because she had been paying attention. And attention, if it is honest enough and patient enough, is one of the names love uses before it is allowed to speak. Henry Vale was not quick with matters of the heart. He was quick with a split rail, quick with a sick calf, quick to hear weather in the wind. But feeling was different. Feeling had to be turned over carefully, like soil where a man suspected stone. So he turned over Rose's words for 12 days. 15 winters were never what I was measuring. He thought about them while he patched the cattle shed. He thought about them while he hauled water to the north trough. He thought about them while he tried, unsuccessfully, to discuss the matter with his mule, Solomon. Solomon, being old and deeply unimpressed by human complication, chewed fence bark and offered no counsel. On the 12th day, Henry rode into Hamilton for nails and heard at the blacksmith's that Martin Knox had asked Rose to the November church supper. More than that, people said she had not refused him. In a town, not refusing a man often became accepting him before the woman herself was consulted. Henry paid for the nails. He rode home slowly. At the barn, he unsaddled the mare, stood with one hand on the leather, and let the thing he had been avoiding show its face. He did not want Rose married to Martin Knox. Not because Martin was wicked. Not because Henry had a claim. He had no claim at all. That was the part that burned. For 4 years, Rose had come on Fridays. For 4 years, she had crossed that pasture with quiet offerings and no ledger. For 4 years, he had accepted the kindness and called it neighborly because he was too frightened to call it by its real name. He went inside and opened the east room. The room still smelled faintly of cedar and old cloth. Abigail's sewing basket sat where it always had, a thimble on the sill, 2 folded aprons in the chair. Henry stood there with his hat in his hands. He had loved Abigail. That truth did not have to be wounded for another truth to live. Abigail, who had known him better than his own mirror, would have had no patience for cowardice dressed as decency. He could almost hear her. Henry Vale, do not turn being honorable into an excuse for being afraid. He let out a breath that had been in him a long time. Then he closed the sewing basket, opened the window, and crossed the pasture. Rose was at the lower ditch with a shovel, clearing leaves from the water gate. She saw him coming. She did not stop working. That was one of the things he loved about her, before he allowed himself the word. She never made a ceremony out of a man arriving late. Henry stopped on the far side of the ditch. Rose. Henry? I have been thinking. She pressed the shovel into the mud. That sounds serious. It has become serious. Now she looked at him. The ditch ran between them, narrow and cold. The mountains held their silence. A crow crossed the gray sky and vanished into the cottonwoods. Henry took off his hat. I don't know how to ask this without sounding foolish, he said. That has not stopped men before. A corner of his mouth moved. No, I suppose it hasn't. He looked down at the water moving past the shovel blade. When I said what I said about 15 winters, I meant to make a joke of something I was too old to say plainly. Rose did not help him. He was grateful for that. I am 54, he said. I know what that is. I know what people will call it. I know what a younger man can offer you without making the whole valley clear its throat." He looked up. "But I need to know what you meant. Not what the town means. Not what Martin Knox means. You." Rose rested both hands on the shovel handle. "What I meant," she said, "was that younger was never my measure." Henry's face changed, but he did not speak. So she gave him the whole truth. "I have watched you for years. I watched you bring lumber to my place after the spring flood and leave before I could thank you. I watched you sit with Mr. Calder's boy when the fever took his mother, because you knew what that room sounded like. I watched you keep your word when no one was there to praise you for it." Her voice did not shake. "That is what I was measuring." Henry stood very still. The water moved between them. "Rose," he said, and her name sounded different in his mouth now. Not careful, not neighborly, true. She looked at him across the ditch. "I am not asking you to pretend the years are nothing," she said. "They are something, but they are not everything." Henry nodded once. It was not a proposal. Not yet. It was the moment before a door opens all the way. The church supper came on the first Saturday of November. Rose went because staying home would have made a louder statement than arriving. Martin Knox was there in a dark coat, charming every woman over 40 and half the men under it. He brought Rose a plate. He pulled out her chair. He said the right things in the right order, and for a while she almost wished wanting were as simple as approval. Near the stove, Mrs. Whitcomb touched Rose's sleeve. "Mr. Knox seems very attentive." "He does. And Henry Vale has been seen crossing your pasture." Rose looked at her. Mrs. Whitcomb lowered her voice, which made no difference at all. "He is a good man, Rose, but he is old enough to be cautious about." Rose glanced across the room at Martin, who was laughing with the sawmill men. Then she looked back at Mrs. Whitcomb. "Do you know what Henry did the morning my lower ditch broke?" The older woman hesitated. "He came before sunrise," Rose said, "with 2 boards, a hammer, and no audience. He fixed the gate. He tracked mud through half his own pasture and never told a soul." "That is kind." "No," Rose said. "That is character. Kindness is a plate at a supper. Character is what a person does when nobody can turn it into a story." Mrs. Whitcomb had no answer for that. Rose left before dessert. Outside, the cold came down clean and sharp. The mountains were black against the stars. She rode home alone and felt, for the first time in months, less uncertain. Not because the town had agreed with her, because it had not, and she was still sure. Henry did not come to the supper. He was not ready to stand in a lit room while people measured him. Rose understood that. But over the next weeks, she noticed changes at the Vale place. The porch rail he had ignored for 3 winters was straightened. The broken hinge on the pantry door was replaced. The east room stayed open, curtains washed, window clear. A second chair appeared on the porch. Not Abigail's chair, a different one. Henry never mentioned any of it. Rose noticed anyway. She noticed the way a woman notices when a man begins making room before he has found the courage to ask whether anyone will enter. On a Thursday afternoon, not a Friday, Henry knocked at her kitchen door. He wore his good coat. His hat looked as if he had nearly worn a hole into the brim with his hands. Rose opened the door. "Henry Vale," she said, "it is not Friday." "I know." "Are you ill?" "No." "Did a cow die?" "No." "Then this is unusual." He looked at the floor, then back at her. "I would like to come calling." Rose's expression did not change quickly. That was mercy. "Properly," he added, "if you allow it." She leaned against the door frame. "Martin Knox asked me to the Christmas dance." Henry swallowed. "I know." "And he is young." "I know that too." "And prosperous." "I have heard. And approved of by nearly every woman with a window facing Main Street." "That has also come to my attention." Rose folded her arms. "What do you have, Henry?" He looked past her for a moment, toward the room, toward the life she had built without asking permission. Then he answered plainly, "I have a ranch that needs mending, a heart that took longer than it should have, a house with one room finally opened, and a promise that if you step into my life, I will not make you smaller to fit it." The kitchen went quiet. Rose's eyes shone, but her voice stayed steady. "Henry Vale," she said, "I have been waiting 4 years for you to arrive at that sentence." He blinked. 4 years? At least. "I was trying to be honorable." "I know." "I may have overdone it." "You did." He looked relieved enough to laugh. Rose opened the door wider. "Come in," she said. "There is coffee, not Martin's." Their courtship surprised Hamilton because Hamilton preferred stories with straight lines. This one bent. It bent around grief, around gossip, around a number people could count but not understand. Martin Knox behaved better than expected. He bowed to Rose at church, wished her happiness, and by spring was paying attention to a school teacher who seemed considerably more impressed by poetry books. Mrs. Whitcomb remained troubled for 2 weeks, then surrendered to curiosity. Alice cried when Rose told her, and then apologized for crying. Reverend Hale asked Henry to speak with him privately. He did it gently. "Rose is young," the Reverend said. "She is, and you are not. I am aware of that every morning when I stand up." The Reverend tried not to smile. "In 20 years, Henry." "In 20 years," Henry said, "I will be 74. The room grew still. "And in 20 years, Rose will have had 20 years with a man who tells the truth, keeps space for her strength, and knows what he has been given." He looked down at his hands. "I cannot promise her youth. I will not pretend to. But I can promise not to waste what time I am given by acting as if fear is wisdom." The Reverend sat with that. Then he nodded. "That," he said, "is a better answer than I expected." They married in April of 1892, on a morning washed clean by rain. Rose wore a blue dress, not white, because blue had been the color of the cloth wrapped around the bread that started the trouble. Henry stood at the front of the church in his good coat, looking less like a man claiming a bride than a man witnessing a miracle he did not intend to mishandle. When Rose walked toward him, he did not think of 15 winters. He thought of all the mornings he had almost let pass because he had confused caution with kindness. The Vale Ranch changed after that, not into Henry's house with Rose placed inside it, into their house. She brought her black account book, her apple grafting knife, 2 quilts, and a way of seeing waste that improved the ranch before summer. He brought cattle knowledge, weather sense, and a patience she trusted more than any compliment. They divided work by ability, not by what neighbors expected to see through a window. Some mornings Rose rode fence. Some evenings Henry baked cornbread badly and accepted correction. In the first year, Rose found a buyer for surplus butter in Missoula, renegotiated the hay bill, and discovered that Henry had been paying too much for nails for 7 years out of loyalty to a man who had not noticed. Henry claimed he had been supporting local business. Rose said he had been supporting robbery with manners. He changed suppliers. Their daughter was born in January of 1894 during a snowstorm that erased the road and made the whole valley hold its breath. They named her Grace. She arrived red-faced, loud, and furious at the cold. Henry was 56 years old when he first held her. The fear came to him then, quietly, honestly. Later, when Rose was resting and the baby slept against his chest, he whispered, "Will I be enough time for her?" Rose opened her eyes. That was one of the things about Rose. She could be half asleep and still find the truth. "You came before sunrise to fix my ditch," she said. Henry looked down at the baby. "You say that often." "Because you keep forgetting what it means." He waited. Rose's voice softened. "A father is not a young man. A father is the man who comes before sunrise and stays until the water runs right." Henry closed his eyes. He did not ask again. Years later, on an October morning bright with frost, Rose crossed the pasture toward the north fence. Grace was on her hip, serious-eyed and bundled in a wool shawl. In Rose's other hand was a blue cloth. Henry saw them coming and leaned on the gate. The mountains behind them were gold at the peaks. The grass was silver. The world looked, for one impossible moment, exactly like the morning that had begun everything. Rose reached the fence and held out the bundle. "Molasses," she said. Henry took it and smiled. Not the rare smile now, a practiced one. A smile that had learned it was safe to come often. Grace reached for his beard and missed. Henry looked at Rose, then at the bread, then back across the pasture to the porch where he had once tried to make a joke out of longing. "I used to think 15 winters were a warning," he said. Rose adjusted Grace on her hip. "They were," she said. He looked at her. "They warned me you had survived long enough to become yourself." Henry looked down at his daughter, at his wife, at the blue cloth in his hands, and he understood what he had nearly lost. Not because he was too old, not because Rose was too young, but because he had almost let a number speak louder than the life standing in front of him. Age is real. So is time. So are the costs no love can talk away. Henry and Rose never pretended otherwise. But Henry had made the mistake many people make when fear wants to sound responsible. He had counted years as if years were the whole measure of a person. Rose had counted differently. She counted the man who came before sunrise, the man who opened the room grief had kept closed, the man who did not make her smaller, the man whose word had weight because he had spent a lifetime learning the cost of giving it. That was not youth. That was not romance dressed up as recklessness. That was value. Sometimes love does not arrive asking you to ignore the calendar. Sometimes it arrives carrying bread through frost, sets it on your porch, and asks whether you know the difference between arithmetic and truth. The calendar had counted the years. Rose had counted the man.